Well, the Republican presidential candidates facing off last night in the final debate ahead of the first-in-the-country New Hampshire primary, focusing mostly on immigration and foreign policy, with very little discussion about the economy. It was also a make-or-break moment for several of the candidates ahead of Tuesday's crucial vote. According to the latest Suffolk University Boston Globe poll, Donald Trump leads the field still with nearly 29% going into New Hampshire, followed by Marco Rubio at 19.4%. Ohio Governor John Kasich is in third place with 13%, with all of the candidates, including my next guest, trailing in the single digits. Dr. Ben Carson joins me right now from New Hampshire. Sir, good to have you on the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I want to ask you about that debate, how you felt about it, but let me kick it off with the opening. Sir, I've got to tell you, that was so hilarious in terms of what happened when you were coming out. Everybody was coming out. What happened? Did you not get the cues?
Senator Ted Cruz.
Didn't hear the name. There was very bad acoustics in the back. ABC News admitted that they had some technical problems, and a number of us actually didn't hear.
And then Donald Trump, instead of moving forward and coming out, you sort of made a friend there. He waited backstage with you.
Well, he couldn't hear either, and John Kasich couldn't hear either. So, it was, you make light of it, and move on.
So how do you think the debate went, Dr. Carson, overall, from your standpoint?
Overall, it went reasonably well. I always get shortchanged because not having been a governor or a senator, no one's likely to call your name out, so you don't get extra time to talk. And, it's not something that the moderators ever take into consideration.
So what do you feel like you would have liked to address and didn't get the chance to because you weren't called on? Was it the question about being a conservative?
Yeah, everybody else got to weigh in on that. I was not called on. And I have strong feelings about what conservatism should be. It should be preserving those things that really work. For instance, in our country, which was declared its independence in 1776, and less than 100 years was the #1 economic power on the planet. How did that happen? And a conservative would analyze that and try to recreate the situation that encouraged entrepreneurial risk-taking and capital investment. And it's not that hard to figure out, rather than moving and allowing ourselves to move on to a new, quote, progressive type of situation. A conservative recognizes that America was built on opportunity, not on dependency, and therefore creating the ladders of opportunity that allow people to move from a state of dependency into the fabric of America. A conservative recognizes that we have enormous resources in this country, and that fueled, our tremendous rise. And that you don't, use something like the EPA and the Bureau of Land Management to depress that development, but rather to work with business, industry, academia, ag, to find the cleanest, most environmentally friendly ways to not only develop your resources, but to preserve your environment.
Yep.
That's just a smattering of things that real conservatives do, and that needs to be emphasized.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And one thing that you're referring to is all of the regulation. New regulation coming out of the EPA, coming out of the Dodd-Frank legislation, Obamacare, which has in many cases kept employers sitting on cash and not hiring new workers. There were not a lot of questions about the economy last night, sir, about jobs, and I feel like that has become, once again, the #1 issue for voters. We got jobs numbers out on Friday, which were, again, below expectations. Businesses are not hiring enough. How would you characterize the jobs picture today in America? And as president, what would you do about it?
Well, it's horrible. They say it's down to 4.9%, but of course you can make that number anything you want it to be based on who you include and who you exclude. In our case right now, the administration excludes the people who stop looking for work. There's so many people who are content just to get, handouts and are not out there looking for work. They're not counted. That's absolutely absurd. The labor force participation rate is at a historic low. That's the real problem. So how do you get that moving again? First of all, you have to get rid of all the unnecessary regulations. And when I say unnecessary, it indicates that I recognize that some of them are important. But you look at them in terms of their benefit versus their cost. When you do that, it makes a big difference. For instance, the President's Clean Power Plan, EPA has said if you implement all aspects of it, it will reduce the temperature of the Earth by 0.05 degrees Fahrenheit in 85 years. That's the benefit. The cost, billions of dollars and millions of jobs. That makes no sense at all. And yet, you know, we are legislating based on ideology and not on evidence. Also, the tax system is oppressive. And we have advocated for a flat tax system. I hope people will go to bencarson.com and read the details, because they're not just bullet points, they're details. But a 14.9% flat tax on everybody, starting at the 150% poverty level, and even the people below that will still pay something, because everybody has to have skin in the game.
Yep.
No deductions, no loopholes, no shelters, because when you put those things in there, people will begin to alter what they do in order to be able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and you believe...
some people have more...
I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
No, some people have more ability to take advantage of it than others. There's no double taxation, no capital gains tax, no death tax. Nothing is double taxed. That's the kind of thing that really will encourage growth to occur.
And you think you can get tax reform done in your first year of the presidency?
I think you've got to get it done in the first year of the presidency, just looking historically at the ability to get things done. But I would begin negotiations immediately with Congress, and I would do it in a very public way so that people would know who is the stick in the mud, if there are any.
Well, I'll tell you, that certainly is what voters would like to hear. Let me ask you about North Korea, sir, and some of the news events in the last 24 hours. North Korea this morning is saying that it has successfully put a satellite into orbit with that rocket launch that, of course, we know is being widely condemned as a disguised long-range missile test. What should the U.S.'s response be?
Well, I believe that we have been very lax when it comes to North Korea, and I think it's costing us. You know, when they engaged in cyber attack, you know, we complained a little bit, but we did nothing. We have tremendous offensive cyber capabilities, and I think we should send them a message utilizing our offensive abilities in such a way that they would never even think about doing it again. And, you know, I think we also need to be developing our strategic defense initiative. You know, Ronald Reagan was laughed at about that. But the fact of the matter is, in the future, he who controls space will control the earth. And we need to make it very clear to North Korea, without a shadow of a doubt, that if they launch a missile that we consider aggressive toward us, it will be the last thing that they do. We need to be very, very strong about that. I think we need to be working with China, because China does have some influence there. I think the economic sanctions that have been relaxed was a mistake, giving them the ability to be able to do these kinds of things.
Let me switch gears, ask you about your own campaign. Obviously, last night, Ted Cruz apologized to you again for bad tactics. Do you accept his apology?
Well, of course I accept the apology. And I think what has to be looked at is, what does this tell you about a person if they will allow a campaign in which people clearly do things that are underhanded? And if you accept that, what does that say that you will do as president? So I think it should be a moment of enlightenment for people.
Now, to be clear, you have cut some staff after Iowa, going into New Hampshire. Do you want to tell us anything about the campaign, how you expect to break out in this crucial vote on Tuesday?
Sure. You know, a couple of months ago, I was being told that everything was wonderful with the campaign. I didn't believe it, so I began to do my own personal investigation. I found a lot of things that were inappropriate. We began making changes. You know, I think we now have an extremely well-run, efficient organization. You'll notice that since that time, we put out tons of policy. Could never get any policy out before that, because we had a dysfunctional organization that was bloated, where we had a lot of people duplicating services. So all of those things have to be fixed. And that's the same kind of attitude I would take as president. You know, there's an incredible amount of inefficiency in our government, duplication of services, you know, way too many federal employees, way too many agencies. We would look at those things in a very logical way, the same way that I did with my organization, the same way I did throughout my medical career. That's what leads to success. And I don't have any obligations to any special interest groups or to any billionaires who want to control anything. I never will have such obligations under any circumstances.
Sounds terrific. Dr. Carson, we'll be watching you in New Hampshire. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you soon, sir.